pumpkin sales are soaring across the UK ahead of Halloween. But even during their annual busy season, the mood among growers has been gloomy due to uncertainty over Brexit.
It's gone on far too long. Everybody just wants a final decision. We know where we're at. People, the people have chosen to leave. Whatever side of the fence you sit on now, everybody's in the same boat now. They've just had enough of it. They just want a final thing.
We're all sort of feeling the pinch in our pockets, but nothing has happened. Politically, I think it's a complete mess.
That mess will have to continue for a bit longer. European Union leaders have agreed to accept the UK's request for a Brexit extension, moving the deadline from the end of this month to January the 31st.
It was a very short and efficient and constructive meeting, and I am happy that decision has been taken.
The EU is calling the latest delay a flextension. That means the UK can leave before the deadline if Prime Minister Boris Johnson gets his deal approved in Parliament. But leader of the opposition Jeremy Corbyn has promised to stand in the way of Johnson's deal.
Whatever way he cares to dress it up, it does create some form of border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, a trade border. We all know the dangers of where that could lead.
Johnson wants to hold elections in December. He's hoping to bolster his numbers in the House of Commons. And in a scary prospect for Johnson's opponents, polls indicate the ruling Conservatives would win by a wide margin. Paolo Montecillo, TRT World.
Well, for more, let's go to Roger Casale, a former Labour member of the UK Parliament. He's also the founder and head of the civil rights organisation New Europeans. He joins us now from London. Welcome to Money Talks, Roger. So as we heard there, the EU has agreed to a so-called flex tension to Brexit, a 3-month delay with the option of leaving earlier if and when the UK manages to pass the Brexit bill through Parliament. Is this a good outcome for the UK?
It's a very good outcome, and I'm glad that they announced the decision today and not, as I had feared, waiting until tomorrow to see how the vote goes this evening in the House of Commons about the general election. I think it's important that the European Union keeps out of UK domestic politics, even though it must be very tempting to try to act in a way that would condition the outcome of the debate this evening. For example, there was talk of President Macron saying he would only give a short extension if the British Parliament didn't agree to a general election. Well, he hasn't seen that threat through. The European Union has announced today that it will give that 3-month extension, and that's very good news. It's excellent news, and it gives us the opportunity to find a sensible outcome for citizens and for businesses, of course.
And what is that sensible outcome in your view?
Well, in our view, the question needs to go back to the people, because Parliament is clearly unable to resolve this. And I'm not sure that even if MPs vote this evening for a general election, I don't think they will, certainly not on Boris Johnson's terms, that would necessarily produce a Parliament that could give any different outcome to the one we have at the moment. But I think what needs to go back to the people is the actual deal that has been agreed. And what I would be in favour of is passing that deal into law, passing the withdrawal agreement into law, and then having a referendum on the deal, a confirmatory referendum, before it actually is operationalised. In other words, pass the deal, put it back to the people one last time, say just before we leave, on these terms, are you sure this is what you want? If they say yes, you leave on the deal with no further discussion or debate. If they say no, then Britain remains a member of the European Union, which would be, of course, the best possible outcome.
Interesting. Now, let's look at this issue of a possible general election in December. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson obviously thinks it's the only solution. The opposition Labour Party isn't so sure, perhaps because they think they might not win a general election. But why do you think is Boris Johnson pushing so hard for one?
Well, Boris Johnson wants to leverage the Brexit issue for his own political purposes and to support his ambition to remain as Prime Minister and the Conservative Party to remain in office. But when you have a general election, it should be to resolve many issues to do with the future of the country. And so I say, and I think that this is the Labour Party's position, let's deal with Brexit first. We'll certainly take the risk of no-deal Brexit off the table first, and then we can talk about having a general election. I think that's the responsible thing to do.
Okay, now this issue of a no-deal Brexit has been rattling markets for some time now, but we saw markets in the UK actually rise today after that so-called flextension was announced. Are you confident that the no-deal disaster scenario is off the table now?
No, I don't think it is completely off the table because should there be a general election and Johnson gets an inconclusive result, then we could be back in the same situation as now, running up against the 31st of January deadline without the withdrawal agreement signed off in the House of Commons and the threat of a no-deal Brexit. So I think the threat of a no-deal Brexit is greatly reduced. And I think there is much more of a focus now in Parliament and in the country, and that's reflected in what you've said about the markets, that a no-deal Brexit must be avoided at all costs. But we haven't completely eliminated the risk. We must completely eliminate the risk. The worst possible outcome would be a no-deal Brexit, far, far, far worse than a Brexit with a deal. Best outcome is to stay. But the worst possible outcome would be to leave with no deal. And there's a small risk that could still happen.
Okay, Roger Casale, we'll have to leave it there. But thank you so much for your analysis from London.